Good morning, and thank you, Leah, for that musical selection and setting the stage for me to share this morning. And thanks to you all for being here. Just hearing that music after that storm we had last night and brings a certain amount of peace to my spirit and hopefully yours as well. It's an honor for me to participate in this prized Elon tradition of Newman Lumen, spiritual and intellectual light. This year's theme being Stuff Happens, Change, Transition, and Transformation, PCT. In my time before you today, I have chosen to highlight a constant variable for me as I transition through the many changes that have occurred in my life. To help illustrate, I will speak about 3 periods of change for me: personal transition, transition through scholarship, and then my career transition, PCT. First, my personal transition. As a child, I was raised by a single parent, being my mother. I lived in a home that was about 700 square feet with no indoor plumbing. There were many nights in the winter where I slept in coats to keep warm. And I was the recipient of a number of community and government assistance programs. And my father wasn't present in my life either during those times. So my mother did an amazing job of raising my brother and me, and I'm really grateful for her love and care that she extended to us, and that I was hopefully able to do some good with it and not let her down. But the experiences of not having a father in my life helped create 2 goals for me. And everything that you see of Randy and everything you have witnessed me to do and to check into my background is all in an effort to serve 2 goals that I have in my life. And those 2 goals are, 1, to be a great husband, and then 2, to be a wonderful father. Everything else you see are just objectives feeding into those goals, and just strategies that will help me reach those goals. Now, I'm not saying I'm a perfect husband or a perfect father, but I work at it every day. I work at it every day, and my wife and my daughters give me plenty of opportunities to get it right. I'm fortunate to have married my high school sweetheart. You may have seen in the program today. That's something that's pretty unique, I think, and so she knows me pretty well, and she still puts up with me, so that's a good thing, to have that treasured friendship with Chiquita, who's my wife. And we have 2 daughters, and when my first daughter was born, I was extremely happy. I mean, it's just like, I had the marriage underway, and I'm working toward that. And so now it's my second goal has started of being a wonderful dad. And I literally smiled so much on that day when she was born that I needed muscle relaxers to soothe my cheeks because I couldn't stop smiling. And that's a true story. If you see any pictures during that time, you'll see me just smiling like the Joker. So then when my second daughter was born, I was just in amazement. I was just like speechless when I saw her come out, and it was really nostalgic. It's just like she was the exact same as my first daughter, and it was like she was a twin who just was delivered 5 years later. And so I was just really grateful for the opportunity that I had at that moment to have a wife and to have 2 daughters now. So that was really great for me. And the transition to parenthood has been really informative for me. I've learned so much about how I carry myself, how I interact with students in all my roles, how I try to treat people with dignity, respect, and help them in developing and reaching their goals. And now that my daughter is 14, I'm learning a whole lot. But with love and patience, she is schooling me well. So this role is part of one of my goals in life. You know, this fatherhood and it's one that I embrace, and it was a transition period for me. You know, you say you want things like, I want to be married. How do you know? You've never been married. I want to be a father. How do you know? You've never been a father. So it's one of those things. It's emerging research. So you learn as you go along. Next is my scholarly transition. My dissertation study was more than just a requirement for the doctoral program. For me, it was an experience that transformed me. Some people call it an academic hazing, but it was a healthy experience for me. It was my most notable firsthand experience with research as a high-impact practice, and Elon knows about high-impact practices. During my dissertation defense, my chair asked me only one question, and I was really, in a nerdy type of way, really enjoying my dissertation defense, just answering all the questions and engaging about this research that I had spent so much time on. But then my chair asked a question, and it wasn't even related so much to the research. She asked the one question: how has my research changed me? And I wasn't expecting that question, nor the overwhelming sense of emotions that just took over me. And I lost it. I just couldn't retain all the emotions behind that question. How has it changed me? Many of you are likely aware of Brown versus Board of Education, the landmark Supreme Court case that ruled that the doctrine of separate but equal was inherently unconstitutional. Brown, some of you may also know that Brown was actually comprised of 5 public school desegregation cases. And maybe even fewer of you know that one of those 5 cases was in Prince Edward County, Virginia. Though Topeka, Kansas is well known for Brown having the lead name in that case, but the fact of the matter is that 77% of the plaintiffs in the Brown case were from Prince Edward County, Virginia. Also, what makes this even more notable is that this, of all those 5 cases, was named after an actual child. Whereas the others were named after adults in their respective communities. So what makes Prince Edward County even more notable is that once the Brown decision was rendered in 1954, rather than desegregate public schools, that county and those leaders in that county decided to pull all the public funding out of the schools, which resulted in almost 1,700 black children and some poor whites without an opportunity for an education for a 5-year period of time. And as a father, to think about my kids being denied an education for a day, for a week, but 5 years. Consequently, that generation of people became known as the crippled generation because of their likely hampered life outcomes that they were going to experience. Interestingly, though, there was a small set of parents in the crippled generation who reared children who not only finished high school, obtained a bachelor's degree, a master's, but also a terminal degree. I thought it was really fascinating that you have this group of people who were able to obtain the highest level of education, whereas their parents were denied the common, decent right to a public school K-12 education. And I wanted to understand, how did these people do this? What propelled them? What motivated them? What was the persistence in this? And so I studied this second generation after this crippled generation to understand I studied them through the lens of resilience, trying to understand how did they overcome the struggles and the adversities that they had experienced. So I learned a great deal about them and their families, but I also learned a great deal about myself. Again, having been raised by a mother with a brother and from a low socioeconomic class, and being in a neighborhood that had its share of violence, grew up in Southside Virginia, which is in a little city there, But that little city was in the top 10 in the whole state of Virginia of crime per capita. And I know it was because of the neighborhood, partly because of the neighborhood in which I grew up in Washington Park neighborhood. So I've seen a lot of violence and crimes and things that you just wouldn't expect someone from that background to, excuse me, to go off to be a candidate for a doctoral degree, PCT. Now, the career transition. For 2 years, I worked at the College of William & Mary as the Assistant Dean of Students, and I really enjoyed the work at that institution, which is also where I completed my doctoral degree. After there, while working at another institution as the Vice President for Student Affairs and Dean of Students, my former boss at William & Mary, who was the Dean of Students, contacted me sharing that she was planning to retire and she would encourage me to apply for the position of Dean of Students at William & Mary. I was honored to have her think of me in that capacity, and I was also intrigued about the idea and the thought. I enjoyed my work in the Dean of Students office at William & Mary. I had gained more senior experience that would serve me well in a Dean of Student role. I still had great relationships with people there. In fact, the chair of the search committee and I once worked very closely together. The person to whom I would report in that role and I shared some pretty significant realities. Her dissertation research focused on the construct of flourishing, whereas mine was on resilience, and so the literature overlaps a lot in those two areas. And we even had the same program advisor, so there were a lot of overlaps there. And then finally, my wife and I, we still own a home in Williamsburg, Virginia, and so it seems like, wow, I should really take a look at this and consider applying for this position. And by the way, I still have a home in Virginia if you still are interested in some real estate there. I'd be glad to talk with you later this afternoon. So I advanced through the levels of interviews and became a finalist, and then learned that I was not selected for the Dean of Students position. And I won't forget, it was March 8th, 2013. I was devastated. I was like, wait a minute, I didn't even initially seek this job. I was encouraged to do this, and I went through the process. Everything lined up. I had a great interview experience, had wonderful feedback, but it didn't happen. And so I bounced back and I went to church that following Sunday, and it was as if I was in there alone. And it was a full congregation, but I felt that I was receiving a message directly intended for me after that disappointment. And so from that, I bounced back and just reinvented myself from a career development perspective, rewriting my resume, creating an administrative philosophy, and a number of things that would make me more marketable and have me grow from the previous experience. And many of you know that I was once a candidate for an Elon position that I did not obtain as well. At the end of that search process, I learned that I was a strong second for the role, but the institution was interested in me for another role. I think this interest speaks to Elon and how unique of a place it is in higher education. Going after and obtaining 2 candidates from one search is impressive in my book. I've been on the employer side of searches before and wanting to have multiple candidates from the search, but knowing I can only select one. But the work that Elon exhibited to bring in a second person was quite impressive. And though against the counsel of many of my friends in the fields, they said, Randy, you're going to go from a vice presidency to a fellowship position? That's not the conventional logic and wisdom in your career trajectory. But against that counsel, I still came to Elon, and very happy for having done so. PCT. Now I'll try to connect all of these transitions. And you've heard me mention PCT several times throughout this talk, and I hope it has not frustrated you by me saying so. And I hope it has not distracted you, but hopefully it has maintained your interest in what PCT means. And some of you may already know. For the rest of you, PCT means prayer changes things. And this really crystallized for me on May 21st, 2013. Certain dates stand out to me. This was a day when I was traveling on Interstate 95, heading south, and it was during the springtime when we, in North Carolina and Virginia, have these sudden spring storms and heavy rain downpours, and my truck hydroplaned, and I'm spinning across the interstate, and I'm seeing all of this occur. I mean, there's sheets of rain coming down, and I see that I'm heading toward this huge grove of big trees. And as I see this about to take place, see this is about to happen, it's unavoidable. I know that I'm going to hit these trees. And in that moment, I said, God, please, I know I'm going to hit these trees. I pray that it's not a head-on collision. And in that moment, this is the only time in my life where I felt that I had a clear, explicit conversation with God. In that moment, I heard 7 words. Maybe I saw 7 words, but I definitely experienced 7 words. You have so much more to do. And at that moment, I hit a tree. And it was so calm. But I hit the side of my vehicle hit the tree. And though the sheets of rain were coming down fiercely, there was a sense of calm and reflection that I was just there and just like, I wasn't sure if I was more amazed I just had a car accident or if I had just had a conversation with God. And I only had a few minor cuts from the broken windshield on my fingers and on my arms. The next day I was on a tennis court. I mean, it's just amazing. So I think of those 7 simple but powerful words almost every day. You have so much more to do. It didn't say what more, it didn't say work more, play more, serve more, but more to do. Through all my transitions, becoming a dad, conducting research, changing jobs, prayer for me has been a constant source of strength that gets me through to the other side, to a better place. And my goals to be a great husband and a wonderful father, I pray multiple times a day to reach those goals. You may even see me walking and mumbling things. If you see me mumbling things, I'm likely praying. You know, I really have, in my authentic way, I'm sharing with you, in my authentic self, I'm sharing with you that I believe tremendously in the power of prayer. So during my research of the second generation, I prayed constantly to portray my participants in an accurate manner, to learn about myself through their experiences. The decision to veer from a conventional path, career path, and join Elon was rooted in prayer. And now, having been here for over 2 years, I pray daily that I am doing all that I can to contribute to creating an environment where all individuals flourish, setting their trajectories to do good works in our world. PCT. Be well, my friends. Thank you for listening.